Hey y'all, welcome to the Movie Howze. You're just in time to hear me talk about. I'm sure this will go over well. Oh, Warner Brothers, in a film industry filled with absolute boneheads, you make a solid case for being the dumbest. I mean, you gotta be especially daft owning the entirety of DC Comics for decades and not taking full advantage of it, letting Disney Marvel surpass them, and they did so without their two strongest IPs. Warner's has no one to blame but themselves for their folly. Ever since 2013's Man of Steel ended up not being the billion-dollar home run they wanted it to be, expecting Avengers-level grosses without the modest hits that preceded it, and also failing to understand that Superman nowadays just isn't as popular as his cape-crusading peer, the WB constantly second-guessed the direction of their DCEU, which resulted in a decade-plus of reactionary studio meddling. For every one or two solid movies that hit big with audiences, there was like 6 absolute duds that they tried fixing until they broke them. Hell, they couldn't even commit to a set Batman continuity. It was a mess. And with Marvel not being the evergreen money printer they used to be, Warner decided to reset the clock in hopes of rejuvenating their damaged comic book movie brand. Like they had done before with Joss Whedon in the theatrical cut of Justice League, Warner's poached one of Marvel's own, James Gunn of the Guardians of the Galaxy series, to bring us a brand new Superman for a brand new DC cinematic universe. From the moment of Gunn's hiring, I had many concerns, feeling he would be a wrong fit for a character so wholesome and mainstream, let alone shepherding an entire film universe. Gunn's wheelhouse is ensembles, of obscure characters that he can bastardize however he wants because only comic nerds will know the difference. Tack on edgy, sardonic humor and a pop soundtrack and boom, there's your James Gunn movie. It's obviously worked for him. I mean, he's made movies I love. I'm not going to deny that the first Guardians is a great movie. But the more I saw, the more I heard, the more that leaked, my worries grew. That being said, I still had to see it and give it a fair shake. Many were touting this as the greatest Superman movie ever made, which, holy hyperbole, Batman. Superman not only fails to live up to the original 1978 Donner film, it can't even surpass the movie its sole reason for existing was to replace. Heads up, there will be heavy spoilers afoot, which is the main reason why I decided to wait so long to post this. Also, it just took me a long time to collect my thoughts. The first step in this new DC continuity presents us with a world already used to superheroes, with the likes of the Justice Gang, Mr. Terrific, the Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl running around stopping threats with little regard for collateral damage. Superman's been around for a few years, trying to be an example of what it means to be both a superhero, but more importantly, a good man. But he's just suffered his first defeat, not that that actually means anything in the story like it should, but anyways, exacerbating matters is Big Blue's recent decision to get involved with a brewing conflict between two warring nations. This has been met with scrutiny from many. Little does he know this is all part of a grand scheme by Lex Luthor, who has a particular hate for the Man of Steel, and wishes to not only destroy him, but destroy his legacy as well. It hurts saying this sucked as much as it did. This should have been my favorite movie of the year. I love DC Comics. I especially love Superman. If you're a regular on my channel, you know that. You also know I'm quite a fan of Man of Steel and have defended it multiple times in the past. So, with that admission soon follows the accusation of me being a Snyder bro, and that I'm simply hating this out of blind neckbeard rage, which is funny, considering I think Batman v Superman is one of the most frustratingly awful movies I've ever seen. I have never hidden my ire towards the DCEU, or the MCU for that matter. Yes, I genuinely like Man of Steel, the first Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Snyder cut of Justice League, and like some goddamn sadist, I have fun watching the disaster that is The Flash. I mean, it's not like I called it one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, but it's definitely a guiltiest of pleasures for me, held together by the return of my favorite Batman. But sure, yeah, keep calling me a Snyder bro because I'm not gonna glaze up a movie you like. I know I'm in the minority here, and that's fine. I hope y'all like my reviews for their content and not simply to fulfill some sort of personal confirmation bias. Part of the fun of being a nerd is getting into absolutely vitriolic arguments about dumb shit. You're entitled to your opinion, as am I, and may the salt flow across all corners of the web. Cause now, on top of the Snyder bros, we have the Gunn bros to attend with, saying how this movie made them want to be a better person, all while spewing some of the most toxic bile online towards anyone who didn't like a movie. Cause kindness is the new punk rock, didn't you know? I personally found this to be less a movie and more a response to the Snyderverse, a massive overcorrection of Joel Schumacher Batman levels, just as those movies were made in response to Batman Returns' inability to sell Happy Meal toys. Except, despite both sharing a colorful comic booky tone, the difference between something like Batman Forever and this Superman movie is that Joel Schumacher, God rest his soul, was a much better filmmaker who actually held his hero with some reverence, rubber nipples notwithstanding. Now, before I go fully off on my rant here, there are still some things I liked. I won't deny that. That's what's so annoying about all this. Most of the cast is good. There's individual moments that David Corenswet gets to do as Superman that scream Superman. He also seems like a really nice, down-to-earth dude. Much like people said about Henry Cavill, he's a good Superman in need of better material. Nicholas Hoult too has bits that feel the closest we've ever gotten to a modern comic-accurate Lex Luthor on the big screen. You know, when he's not crying like a brat when he's defeated. Rachel Brosnahan makes for a solid Lois Lane having good chemistry with Corn Sweat, Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner is a perfectly punchable asshole, and Eddie Gathegi is pretty great as Mr. Terrific. But therein lies the problem. Why are the likes of Mr. Terrific, Ultraman, the Engineer, Metamorpho, Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, Crypto, Peacemaker, and Supergirl here? Why are there so many goddamn characters in this movie? This is a Superman movie. All I need for a Superman movie, especially a first Superman movie, is Big Blue, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and a heavy that the Man of Steel can punch. This bloated ensemble makes the title hero not feel special in his debut movie of this continuity. And all of this stems from Gunn, pulling double duty as both writer and director. Not only did he make a hideous-looking movie shot by the same cat who did The Flash, and Jesus Christ, you can tell. How does this look worse than a movie 12 years its senior? Hell, how is it that the CW Superman and Lois show has scenes that look better with a fraction of the budget? If that wasn't bad enough, the movie's also rocking a dreadful screenplay that has no faith in itself. All of Gunn's worst creative tendencies are here and accounted for alongside a couple new ones I didn't even know I hated until now. It is unreal how much of the dialogue here is the as-you-know style of telling, not showing. Everyone has to explain things that in-universe they should all know. As you know, it's our 3-month anniversary. As you know, Lex, I gave up my humanity to help destroy the alien.
I've sacrificed my own humanity to help get rid of it.
Or my personal favorite is when Superman rants at Lex Luthor about how human he is to recap the film's entire thesis, treating the audience like a gaggle of troglodytic morons.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry!
Gunn said it was hard for him to crack Superman, which makes sense. The character is ill-suited for him. I'm not sure he actually likes Superman. Gunn's always been an edgelord, sprouting up from the ultra-low-budget vomitorium that is Troma Films, where being the most tasteless earned you the most cred. And while he excels at cheeky humor with a punk sensibility, he can't do earnest or patriotic, and he sure as shit can't let a moment breathe in its drama or tension anymore, constantly interrupting with lame jokes to keep things light and poppy, doing terrible Marvel-style humor when everyone is sick of it, making the movie almost feel like a parody. I mean, Lex Luthor's plot is foiled because of his TikTok girlfriend's selfies. This doesn't even feel like the same director of the first Guardians movie who had scenes like this. But hey, hashtag super shit. Warp credit on Gunn's part incorporating a story point that Superman is the target of an army of mutant monkeys running a social media smear campaign at Luthor's behest. Not only does it give the movie's defenders their own built-in rebuttal to any and all criticisms towards the movie, no matter how valid, it's also a salty jab at Gunn's own cancellation for being an absolute creep. Let's not kid ourselves. No one makes that many jokes of that sort unless you've got issues or you're a massive tool with the self-control and sense of humor of an eternally online 14-year-old boy. Gunn's characterizations across the board feels off too. Superman's described here as the world's strongest hero, so he should be respected or feared whenever he enters the room. You know, like Superman should. But in the actual movie, everyone treats him like the dumb jock that's only good for punching stuff. The Justice Gang scoff and roll their eyes at him, calling him a wuss.
Come on, bro, don't be such a wuss.
Lois Lane thinks he's a himbo, not considering the ramifications of his actions. He gets kicked in the balls. Man, even Crypto the Superdog doesn't show him any reverence. Which, if the dog started as a terror and then became the good boy he is in the comics after being saved by Superman, having earned his respect, it would work. But that would involve a character arc, and we don't have time for that. So he just stays this chaotic menace that can't even stay on the Kent farm out of fear of him killing the family cows. We need this little shit to sell toys to recapture the runaway success of Groot and Baby Yoda. Our hero's credibility be damned. It's not cute, it's obnoxious. Gunn's version of the Man of Steel constantly loses, not only fights, but his composure, going into screaming fits when things don't go his way. On top of that, he spends a large chunk of the movie on his back, needs to be saved multiple times by other heroes or plot convenience swooping in to save the day from this pastiche of bullshit. There's no moment in this movie that feels like this spectacular feat that only Superman could overcome. Superman the movie has that moment. Man of Steel had that moment. Hell, even Superman Returns had that moment. But it never happens here. Further killing the vibe is an absolute whiff of a film score, having no new identity of its own, once again falling back on the original John Williams themes. Which, yeah, those are great, but their rendition of it here is terrible and never properly utilized. Which is weird, because there's actually a really obvious moment where the big hero moment should have happened, with the John Williams theme going full bore in the background, where people are crying out for Superman to save them, a moment to prove to the world that he is in fact there to help and win back the world's trust. Except Superman doesn't even show up. Instead, Green Lantern shows up, mocks Superman, and makes middle finger constructs to save the day, cause that's funny, right? But yes, keep tweeting that this is the DC icon brought to screen. I had literal tears in my eyes. Such a shining beacon of what's considered safe masculinity in this age, where calm stoicism is replaced by overly emotional man-children, who yell at their girlfriend, or lock up their exes in a pocket universe because they said mean things about them online. Further hindering this flick is the decision to set it in a world that treats the likes of giant kaiju attacking downtown as commonplace, making the fantastical feel mundane, leading to ridiculous pablum like Metropolis being able to fully evacuate a city full of millions of people in 10 minutes because we need to avoid actual stakes. Then we get to Gunn's take on both Superman's biological and adoptive parents. They don't fare much better. The kids here are country bumpkins, like they were written by someone who's never spent a day of their life on a farm and doesn't understand how smart you have to be to run one for decades, let alone multiple generations. No, we gotta make a joke about how the kids don't know how cell phones work in their 60s, when the tech was widely implemented back in their 30s. Because it's funny when boomers yell into cell phones, right?
Pa says, don't be a stranger.
But that's a minor annoyance compared to what's done to Jor-El and Lara, who are no longer loving parents who sent their son to Earth to be a beacon for humanity, to lead them towards a better tomorrow. Instead, they're tyrants who sent Kal to Earth to plow bitches nonstop, spread thy seed, and rule without mercy. James, when we said we liked how Zack Snyder referenced Dragon Ball Z, we meant filmmaking-wise, not for you to steal Goku's origin. But okay, Jor-El and Lara are now monsters who would have no qualms with General Zod. And shut up with the cope that Lex doctored the Kryptonian message. Not only did Mr. Terrific confirm it was legit in the movie.
I know there's computer forensics guys. They're not gonna say it's legit unless they are sure.
Gunn himself confirmed it. Hearing people say it's gonna be retconned in a later movie, so it'll be okay, is pathetic. Just come to terms that Gunn's DC screwed up Superman's origin more than Snyder ever did. I never want to hear anyone whinge about Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel ever again if they're going to bend over backwards to defend this slop. There are so many moments in this movie that if Snyder did it, there would be no end to the complaints. Like Superman torturing a world leader with a cactus, or letting a giant alien eyeball attack Metropolis so he can have a heart-to-heart with Lois Lane, cause him sad. And the Justice Gang has it anyway. The same dude who saves a damn squirrel earlier, when the framing of the previous shot made it seem like he let people get crushed to do so, but all life is sacred, right? But sure, this guy's gonna let the group he himself saw not caring about collateral damage handle something like this without intervening. You know what? Screw it. Even if I hated the direction of the greater DCEU that followed, Man of Steel was a much better film than this. It looked, felt, and sounded like, well, a movie made by people who gave a shit. I mean, it was actually about Superman and not a DC Universe movie co-starring Superman. Compare when Snyder made a Superman movie. He had the costume designer weave into the S-Shield a Joseph Campbell quote translated as Kryptonian. When Gunn does Superman, he turns Supergirl into a drunk frat girl who calls Superman a bitch.
Thanks for watching him, bitch!
Snyder's Superman killed Zod when there was no other choice and hated that he had to take a life. Gunn's Clark faces off against his Ultraman clone, which bastardizes both Ultraman and Bizarro to make a character that barely resembles either, but Superman doesn't try reasoning with him or talking him down. No, he just throws his ass into a black hole and then goes back to cracking jokes.
Quit messing around!
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
How does that feel in any way like Superman? I can understand if not fully agree with the opinion that Snyder's rendition of the character was more about saving lives on the macro level, stopping world-ending threats with little time to pull cats out of trees. I love that side of the character. But Snyder was more focused on the side that hadn't been accurately adapted to the silver screen. The Superman that goes belt to ass when he finds out you can take a hit from him. It just seems that people didn't like being confronted with what all the superhero fights we read in the comics or watched in animation would look like in live action. Because it always felt disingenuous hearing people pearl-clutching for this, but not this, or this, or this, or this. Yes, I love the Donner movies for how they perfectly depict classic Superman, warts and all. But that's not the only valid interpretation of the character. That's like complaining about Adam West Batman because you prefer grim, dark Batman. You can hate it, but it's still just as valid. Each one has its time and place. I appreciate what Snyder, David Goyer, and Chris Nolan did with their take, depicting the character more along the lines of the John Byrne, Dan Jurgens era, because it was an actual take on the character. This new Superman movie should have been a return to those old school sensibilities of the Donner era, but it's brought to you by someone who doesn't share those beliefs, so it all comes off as a cynical, effervescent facsimile. It's remarkable. Warner's grand plan to set DC right and avoid the overstuffed disaster that was BVS was to do the same damn thing, just this time swapping the brain-rotted pretension for juvenile humor and ghastly cinematography. It's like they're photo negatives of each other's awfulness. And, just like BVS, there actually could have been a great movie here if handled with a leaner execution. Get rid of all the supporting cast and make it a reverse Kingdom Come with the main conflict being Ultraman versus Superman, and about winning the hearts and minds of the public. A critique of how many view Big Blue as old-timey and ineffective compared to the more brutal postmodernist superheroes. Hell, if you had some balls, you could have had Henry Cavill play Ultraman, so one, it's not obvious innocent universe, he's a clone, but 2, it further adds a layer to that narrative. But no, that wouldn't be scatterbrained enough to satisfy Gunn. And despite all this effort to reboot everything from scratch, well, let's be real here, not everything, just the things James Gunn didn't have a hand in creating, which is why John Cena and Gunn's own wife are still in this continuity. All while lying to actors fans genuinely like, telling them they'd still have their roles before ultimately sacking them. We're now at the sobering reality that this made less than Man of Steel, a movie that again, in Warner's eyes, underperformed. And this is done worse. And we're not even adjusting for inflation, or pointing out that Man of Steel sold 50 million more movie tickets, underlying the massive loss of audiences that have befallen the entire industry, or counting the additional $120 million that Man of Steel made in home video sales, something this movie won't benefit from since the film studios killed a viable secondary market to chase after a streaming model that doesn't bring in money. The amount of spin since release trying to paint this as anything other than a disappointment, playing fast and loose with the facts, has been ridiculous. Best opening weekend for a Superman movie ever. If we count preview days for this movie and not for Man of Steel, which then if we did, yeah, Man of Steel made more. Strong second weekend hold for Superman, for a movie that performed on the bottom end of its opening weekend projections. Best domestic gross for a solo Superman movie ever. Yes, because we only count domestic grosses. And really, a solo movie starring 7 other superheroes? Superman never needed to break even to be successful. Superman is now super successful, crossing $600 million, because $500 million is the new billion for a superhero movie. Until the next Spider-Man comes out and proves that wrong. A short 35 days later, the movie gets released to digital on deep discount, whereas F1, a fellow Warner's movie released earlier in the year, was re-released in theaters due to it actually having legs. Sure, Warner's can claim Superman's made them a profit of $125 million when it didn't even achieve the 2.5 times ratio needed to actually be profitable, whatever.
Close enough.
Let's just chalk it all up to creative accounting. You know, like when Warner's claimed that the original Batman movie with its $35 million budget and its like plus $400 million grosses never actually turned a profit, so they wouldn't have to pay out bonuses. But fine, let them just release it to HBO Max now, where they don't have to show any real numbers and just continue claiming it's this massive hit to save face. This all reeks of desperation. I can't even imagine the panic over there right now. I'm betting someone over there is wishing they just went ahead with Chris McQuarrie's pitch for a Man of Steel sequel with Cavill that was rumored to have the ace of having Tom Cruise playing an aged Hal Jordan in it. That ship has sailed, though. Like, nada, the Snyderverse isn't coming back, too many bridges have been burnt, but y'all understand that after this, we are never going to hear the end from the Snyder Bros. And they'll kind of have a point, and that is so fucking funny to me. But seriously, what's the direction of this new DCU? If Gunn and Warner's were smart, they would already have a new Batman and Wonder Woman movie out within the next 18 months, because you need your foundations, you need your Trinity. But at this point, it all feels scattered and unfocused. Batman's still in a state of flux. We don't even know if we're getting a sequel to The Batman. It feels like that's not going to happen. Gunn's ego wouldn't allow someone else's Batman to exist while he's in charge. No, next up is Peacemaker Season 2, which is the apparent reason why they released Superman to digital so early. Because hey kids, I hope y'all love the kid-friendly adventures of Superman and Krypto. Up next is the ultra-violent HBO series with superhero orgies. After that will be a Supergirl movie, a Green Lantern TV show, and a Clayface movie, which I love Clayface. He might be my favorite Batman villain, but why is he getting a solo movie? Why waste him there? Why not utilize him in a Batman movie, where you can finally have a fresh villain for once instead of repeating the same 6 villains they've been using for all of these movies? Lanterns, despite good casting for both Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, feels dead on arrival, because choosing to have audiences' first introduction to the Green Lantern Corps be with a jerk like Guy Gardner, I feel like you poisoned the well. But Guy's supposed to be an asshole. That's comics, man. Yes, and you made him the face of the space cops of this universe.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And in regards to Supergirl, if this barely crossed 600 million, what hope is there for that flick? After this and Marvel's entire output this year underperformed and are now allowed to say that in the open, I think now is the time to give the entire genre a rest. How about a decade of little to no new superhero movies? Regroup, reassess, come back strong. Because it's obvious that audiences are burned out. I know I am. And I really don't want to be. I just don't care anymore. Because in the end, I found Superman to be an infuriating garbage fire flick that wasted its potential and did little to make me hopeful for DC's future. But that's enough for me. I'd like to hear what y'all thought now. Like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. But more importantly, until next time, stay safe out there.